Perfect. All right, so welcome everybody to the Wingate lab demonstration. I'm Dr. Ostrom, this is Dr. Haig, and we've got two other instructors here as well that will maybe be also riding. Yes. So the Wingate test that we're going to be doing today is the 30-second bout. It is going to be testing the ATP PCR and glycolytic systems. So what Dr. Haig will do is he will after he's warmed up and ready to go, he will cycle as fast as he possibly can. Once he gets to the peak RPM, we'll drop the weight, which is going to be a little button controlled here on the right handlebar. And that weight will land onto the flywheel. He'll work against that for 30 seconds. And after the 30 seconds, we'll pull the weight off the flywheel. And he'll continue to cycle afterwards, trying to clear some of that lactate that you've created in the lower limbs and facilitate that clearance through the muscle contraction and that pumping on the veins. So that's really kind of the hope of this. We can get peak power, minimum, and a mean power, as well as a fatigue index or a power percent drop. That would be from the peak to the minimum. And then if you do this over time, you can see how well the training regimens that you've been implementing in your prescription are facilitating change in the ATP PCR and glycolytic system. So that's really kind of the premise for this test. What I've done is I've already set up the height of the bike so that Dr. Haig has about a 15% angle at the bottom or whatever feels comfortable for him. We've kind of fastened him into the pedals so that he can both push and pull with the legs as he's getting a little bit tired on the latter half of the assessment and utilize that. But then we're going to go over to the computer, which you can't necessarily see at this point because it's on a little screen here. And I'll actually just move this. There you go. So this is the computer that we've got. So I'm going to put in the information for Dr. Haig, and we'll put his test in the lab demos and add him as an individual. Get a little closer. I can hold it. Yeah, Matt, maybe you can hold it. Okay. So then I can type. Okay, so so the main things that we care about, height, because we've already set the height of the seat. Height isn't that important for Dr. Haig right now, but we care about sex and then the weight. So if you have your weight in kilograms,
92.8.
92.8. So that sounds like 93 because there is a 92.8. All right, sweet. So what we would do is we'd go over to test. We would find Dr. Haig, and we would then have the test set up. You can see that we've got 30 seconds here, the workload that we're going to put on the flywheel, and we will manually drop the weight, but then the timer and assessment will start automatically with that weight drop. And so we're going to put 7 kilograms on the flywheel basket. So you can go ahead and put the tripod back over. We also have some furry friends that are joining us, possibly. One of the legs it's came out. It's down. So let's see.
It's like
Let's go there. All right. There we go. All right. So because it is 7 kilograms, the basket itself weighs 1 kilogram. So we're going to put 6 kilograms of weight onto the basket so that once the flywheel drops, we'll be good to go. There you go. You're at 7 kilograms total. How you doing? Yeah. You're good to go. All right. So again, if you'd like to cheer on Dr. Haig, you can, but I'm not sure we'll be able to hear you because we're all going to be cheering in here and playing some pretty significant music. So what I'll do is I'll count him down. I'll say 3, 2, 1. And then he'll crank up, like I said, the RPMs to his maximum that he can achieve. I'll drop the weight on the flywheel, and he'll cycle as fast as he can for 30 seconds. When that's finished, I'll pull the weight off of the flywheel using this little toggle piece, and you'll continue to pedal, recovering from the significant pH drop that you would have experienced. So, all right, with that, we're going to play the requested music.
Really loud.
Really loud. All right. So it's looking good. One. And, and and that was 30 seconds. Nice. So we've got a recording of that for sure. You can show it to your students.
I will.
In your undergrad classes. He did it, powered through it. It's pretty awesome. So yeah, you did it. How are you feeling right now?
All right.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah.
Doc said, way to go.
Way to go. Yeah. Frank's
Glad-
leg over here.
That second half,
Oh, it sucks. It's the worst.
like, well, my legs do.
Yeah, we tried to so when we're doing this assessment, you probably can't see this, but I keep the computer and the timer separately so that the participant can't see that. If they can see the time, normally after 10 seconds they get really demoralized and it does not go well. So yeah, you were definitely transitioning to a different gear at about 15 seconds. So yeah, it is what it is. Hot beef injection. Yeah. If you're wondering what the song is, it is Push It to the Limit by Hot Beef Injection. It's pretty good. So yeah. So if you'd like to, do that, move the camera over just a little bit. All right, so this is what the data kind of looks like. I don't know if you can see that really well.
Dark, can you tilt it? Or hold the camera up?
How about that?
It's getting better. Oh, I can't tilt it.
I was gonna
Sorry.
say that. All right, so we can see that the RPM finishing was around 63. It was exactly 63.
Point with your finger. Oh, yeah, I see.
Right here, 63.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. And so the analysis, if you want to see the full test, we go to test data and analysis. And nice. 868.45 watts was your peak. Okay, which is pretty good. It's really good. And then we've got the average power, which was 641. And then the minimum was 407. So we had a 53% drop from your peak to your minimum. So a couple of things that you can take from this. One, you could, if you wanted to, you could look down at each of these different time frames. They'll give you like the 0 to 5 seconds, what that looked like, the average RPMs. And you can also see over time what 5 second time frame produced the greatest drop in RPM. And so we're kind of looking at this as an exponential decay type of response, going from around 150 watt or RPMs to down around 67 at the end. So you know, a 90 or so RPM drop, which is pretty good, you know, not too bad. So one thing that we can do is we can compare different types of athletes, different types of individuals, and see, does their fatigue index, is that specifically different? Typically what you will see is football players or athletes like that would have a higher power drop compared to say an endurance athlete, like the one that we've got coming up next. I fully expect this power drop to be lower because they utilize their aerobic system more and their anaerobic system less. They're going to have a lower peak power, most likely. And you can convert this into a relative peak power and relative scores based on weight. If you wanted to take, say, 868 divided by weight in kilograms, that would give you your relative score for that. And so you can see the relative power drop is here. The relative peak power is here at 9.34, and the average. And so you can see that when weight is taken into consideration, Dr. Haig has a peak power of around 9.34 watts per kilogram. So that could be a number that you could use to compare between men and women, between different types of athletes. You can see what their peak power is based on weight. So different size, body type, things like that. Does anybody have any questions on that?
It doesn't mean until you're done.
Yeah, I mean, my legs were done. Like, through,
Yeah.
the rest of that.
Yeah.
Start up. Oh, yeah, put down the shit.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna add the next person better than the first in here.
Yeah,
Right, we're going to add
It's still like McDonald's.
It's gone breakfast, yeah, like right before.
Yeah.
Professor Howard, what would your weight in kilograms be?
Mine?
In kilograms,
63.9.
63.9.
The math.
Sounds like 64.
I'm fine.
Carry the one. Carry the one. Okay, so then
This is the number.
what we would do, it is just a
That's
number.
my number, my entire life. So.
It's a great number. All right, so then we just set this up, again, getting to that manual drop of the weight. Auto start timer, the weight now on the flywheel is going to be 4.8. So we'll have to update that for the next assessment. So yeah, 3 kilograms here. And then we're going to have a 5 and then 3 of those 0.1. So that is 4.8 kilograms. And we're all set for
Ready?
Professor Howard to come on over.
All right.
So,
Come
sorry.
on down.
I'm gonna quick check and see if there were any questions or comments other than just.
I had a couple questions.
Yeah.
I checked the comments.
Yeah,
How,
let's hear it, Brandon.
how do you determine how much weight you put in the basket?
I'm sorry, I missed that one.
How do you determine how much weight you put in the basket?
That is a great question. Thank you for the seat. Okay, so the weight is going to be universal for every person. It's 7.5% of the individual's body weight. So it's the same relative intensity that each individual is working against, and then you can compare that in your relative weight, peak power, mean, and minimum. Probably should have talked about that first. Yeah, the weight is determined by 7.5% of the exercise's body weight.
And body weight is manually entered. It's not, there's no body weight measurement on the bike itself.
Yep, no, it does not have the capabilities to measure the individual's sitting weight. So we have like a scale over at the side that we end up having the participants get their measure, and then we plug that in manually. Yep.
All right, and power output is in watts, right?
Yes, correct. Watts or in watts per kilogram, depending on if we're looking at absolute or relative terms.
And in terms of doing the test, you probably want to have the participant do a warm up, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So Dr. Haig was up here warming up beforehand, and Professor Howard was warming up. I don't know if you probably can't see it, but there's a bike over in the corner that you were on cycling beforehand, kind of getting about 5 minutes of warm up in beforehand. If I was doing this in a large group like we've done in classes when we're having them here on campus, I normally have a warm up bike here and then a cool down bike in front of the computer that you can't really see. And so we just cycle through. So there's somebody warming up, then they transfer over to the Wingate, then they go from the Wingate when they're able over to the cool down bike, and then you just keep cycling. So we have had, like I've had hundreds of people do this, but in classes, we can normally do in like an hour, about 10 an hour. So yeah, it depends really on how well the person's recovering. You don't want to just push them over right away to the next bike because some people will legitimately fall over. We've had people throwing up, yeah, passing out, lots of things like that. Yeah, I've been to the point when, so like the lab, some of the assessments that I've been doing, I've done like a 15-minute break between the VO2 max test and then jump over to a Wingate. So I'm already tired from the VO2 max test. We do this 15 minutes later. There were points where I was like, yeah, I'm done for like 45 minutes just sitting on the back in like on a table or something trying to recover because it's pretty brutal when you're taxing all three of those systems, the aerobic capacity and then the anaerobic capacity back to back. So yeah. But like you did it today, you ran 10 miles already today. Yeah, so you're warmed up, all nice and ready to go.
I have one other question.
Yeah.
So you have to stay in the saddle. You can't stand up.
Correct. Yes. That there are some, if you look online, there are some people that allow for that in their lab, but to keep everything consistent,
yeah,
I have everybody stay in the saddle, not float, not stand. Yeah, stand in the saddle the whole way.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep. Uh-oh. Okay. Okay. We need our cheering section back for. Okay. Okay. Matt, you actually go with Dr. Hanna. Oh, in the back. Yeah.
All right, good. I'm ready when you're ready. No, I'm ready when you're ready. Oh, here it comes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So another thing, if you are ever doing this with multiple people, I always implement the buddy system. So if you have gone, you can't leave the area that the testing's occurring in without a partner that hasn't gone already. So that way the person can actually like help them if they're having troubles in the bathroom or drinking water or something like that, because we don't want people passing out and no one's under catching.
Especially for that.
We have had that happen, not here at Concordia, but many, many years ago in my graduate experience, there was talk of people not being caught because their partner and them had both gone. They both went to the bathroom and they passed out in the stall.
Together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and one person might have bounced off the porcelain throne. Not great. Okay, I was not in charge at that point, but that is the mythological experience that has occurred at some areas. So yeah. All right, so you want kickstart?
Yes.
Okay.
You know my sign?
I know. Yeah, I got you.
You learn a lot about somebody from their power song.
You do actually. Yes.
Relatives. Give me the rock.
Yes. All right.
All right, here we go. Right in time to cheer on the knees.
Also, if you end up like doing a lot of these, your voice will be lost by the end of it. It's just toast because you're cheering and doing all that. So, all right. All right. All right, well, let me Nice.
It's past.
Yes, pass one. All right.
We have a chat or something? Chat.
Yeah,
Oh, we got
Oh,
what do you got?
fueling and circadian rhythm effect about the measure.
oh, yeah, that is a good question. Yeah, so I will tell you, working with a ton of college students, both of those things are very important. If you fuel with alcohol, you will throw up. It is not good. I've been stacking bodies, and like we had Thursday, we had a Thursday night vendor kind of thing that kids would go on at the University of Minnesota, and they'd forget lab was on Friday, and they're like, oh shoot, I just fueled with a whole bunch of crap the night before, and I didn't sleep. Terrible output and throwing up, like literally legs up against the wall, laying down. It's not good. So yeah, there definitely is a connection to what you're fueling. Typically what I say is have some sort of fuel source available afterwards for recovery. But if you have something, a light snack of some sort, like what you probably eat for an endurance type of activity, around 500 grams of like an easy carb that you can consume beforehand. You don't want to do it with like nothing in your stomach beforehand, but you also don't want to eat within like a 30-minute window of the test. So yeah, really just anything that is out of the stomach already, you've got something in the bloodstream to kind of help facilitate that ATP production. If you are having those muscle glycogen stores not readily available. So if you can increase that muscle glycogen storage and have that utilized for this test, it's going to be great. Sleep-wise, I haven't looked into sleep or lack of sleep and overall performance, but again, anecdotally, college students typically seem to have a tougher time with this when they have been out the night before, staying up late and doing tomfoolery and skullduggery. So yeah, I'm not sure if there is a significant impact on overall power output for lack of sleep or more sleep. That could be a really good interesting study to into again, like a paired t-test. 3 or 1 would be getting 8 hours of sleep, 1 would be getting like 6 hours of sleep. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what the circadian would be in the literature at this point, but that is a really good question.
They couldn't hear music.
No, sorry. It was Kickstart My Heart, and that was a really good song by Motley Crue at the point. Yeah. Yeah. So if you'd like to see what, are you feeling okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. Good. You're still good?
Yeah.
Sweet. Dr. Bowles, to have you show the data. Okay. So like with Dr. Haig, we have the same or similar type of power output. Oh, we're going here. Getting crazy. Oh, holy moly.
I'm not a professional with this.
Okay.
Probably not some move. What's that?
There we go. How's that? Maybe you can see that, hopefully.
Try to get a little closer.
All right. So peak power for Dr. Haig was 848, if I remember. Close to 850. And your peak power per kilogram was around 9, I believe. So when we compare Professor Howard, Dr. Haig, Professor Howard from a peak power, not relative, is at 483. So almost half of the power difference, right? But when we look at this per kilogram, you're a lot closer. You're at 7.56. So, just 1.5 watts per kilogram difference. But that weight difference is obviously going to come into play, and male versus female difference is also going to come into play. Your minimum power, though, was 307. So you had a peak power of 483, minimum of 307, and your power drop, like I said, because you're an endurance athlete, 36.42. So I was expecting you to have a really low fatigue because you're trained more endurance-wise. You're going to have a lower peak, though, because you aren't trained anaerobically. So Dr. Haig and Professor Howard are going to have significant differences in their output because of the types of activities that they're involved in. And this will be able to, again, show you what that looks like from a quantitative standpoint, and also as a good reference point to inform training. So like if, again, Professor Howard is wanting to continue to train aerobically and then maybe adds in an anaerobic phase, we would expect maybe that power drop to remain around 36, but hopefully the peak power would increase a little bit. And so you could see, yep, you are actually seeing improvement in your anaerobic side of things. Likewise, if Dr. Haig wanted to do more endurance activity, we'd expect his power drop to be lower than the 53%, kind of around maybe 48 or around 50. So we could see overtime changes happening there. Yeah, that's basically that.
We've got some more
So,
questions.
quick question. This test seems like a really good demonstration of when the ATP PCR system is no longer the primary energy system.
Yes.
Participants in 7 to 10 seconds,
Yep.
the RPMs went way down.
Yes.
So I'm assuming peak power is going to be measured in those first few seconds.
Yes, peak power is typically going to be measured. Sorry, the camera is going crazy. There we go. I'm gonna have to just follow me now. Yes, so peak power is going to be measured within the first 5 seconds, and typically it is coming down here? No? Okay. All right. We'll just stand. Yeah, so it's going to be measured within that first 5 seconds as the overall peak, and then you could go frame by technically you could go frame by frame, but what the software does is it gives you 5-second chunks to show what that power output, what that RPM is like for the individual up to 30 seconds. And so you can really see, like you were saying, that 10-second window is where the highest power is generated, and then there is kind of this significant leveling off, dropping off, exponential decay, where you're transitioning to more of that glycolytic system for ATP production. Yeah, awesome observation, Brandon, and connecting that to knowledge that you have.
What's the sampling rate?
The sampling rate?
Somebody, Josh says sampling rate is 5 hertz. Do you know like how?
What the I would run away from the thing.
Yeah.
That is a good question. So once you're in it, I just trying to expand this. I'm trying to expand the visual. You can see that they're
Down. You got to go down.
Down
More.
even more.
Even more.
Really?
Yeah, around there-ish. It's kind of dark though. It's hard to see.
Gotcha. Okay.
Better.
Yeah. So there are many points. I'm not sure what the sampling rate is.
Let's look at like this. Does it give an Excel where it gives like each?
Yeah. Just from a visual, it looks like about 5 to 10 samples per second. About, yeah, it's probably close to 5 just from looking at this point. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to here, and that's probably pretty close to 1 second. Yeah, so I'd say it's about 5 to 10 per second in that sampling for the overall measure of RPMs. And again, utilizing that with the known weight to determine what wattage would be.
And then Carrie was asking, do you think peak power was also impacted by the physical activity she performed prior to the test, since she had already run 10 miles?
It's a great question. Yeah.
Super fast.
Possibly. Was it at a super fast?
No, it was not.
Yeah. It could be. I would probably though. Yeah, I would, because of the system that you're utilizing for that, and the system that you're utilizing now, as long as you didn't have a lot of muscular damage that you created, I would say it wouldn't have as big of an effect because you're using 2 different systems. And research kind of shows that when you have individuals that have completed a marathon, most of their glycogen in those type 1 fibers gone, but in type 2A, type 2X fibers, there's still glycogen present because they weren't utilizing those at the same rate. So I would expect, because you would be using, as long as your type 1 fibers still had some muscle glycogen in them because you're utilizing all three, I would expect your power to be pretty close to the same.
And the peak would.
Yeah, and for the peak. Yeah, exactly. Now if we were doing like repeated peak measures like every 15 seconds, or sorry, every 15 minutes and doing repeated ones, I can tell you your peak is going to drop a little bit, because I've done that before. Where you do like one, do it again, one, yeah. So, but because you weren't utilizing that system or those systems specifically, metabolically speaking, I wouldn't expect a large difference, if any, between peak power with and then without exercise beforehand. Good question.